People power growth, but recruiting and onboarding are expensive, exhausting, and absolutely overwhelming. I've been there, and it doesn't have to be this way. Welcome to Hire and Empower. I'm your host, Molly McGrath. Join me as we interview leaders who care about their teams and distill powerful lessons from them. This show is sponsored by H&E, helping organizations to find their best hire and empower them for success. Learn more at hiringandempowering.com. What a perfect time of year to have a conversation about having it all and how to be happy in both worlds, where you can have a successful career and a happy family. And I'm excited because I have a lawyer guest here today. So you all don't get to say to me, well, that might happen for everyone else, but not for me because I'm a lawyer, which is what you typically tell me. So I have missed. Oh, Sarah, Ruffi attorney here with us today. Sarah, welcome. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for the invite. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be great. And I'm so excited I was able to, I don't remember how we connected. I think it was on LinkedIn. Was it that where?
Actually, it was your marketing guy contacted my office to get you on my podcast.
Oh, yeah, that was so fun. That seemed like many moons ago.
And it should be coming up soon since my son, who moved to Indiana, now has his computer. So that should take care of his excuse as to why it didn't go up yet.
Yes. Yeah. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your practice, and we're going to talk about your Amazon bestseller book.
Well, thanks. So my name is Sarah Ruffi. I have been practicing law for 25 years already, and I am a mother, a wife, a speaker, an author, as well as an entrepreneur. And I ended up, I'll tell stories, so I'll kind of tell you my story in a nutshell. So when I was in law school, actually, I was never going to be a lawyer because who goes through that much school? Got to be nuts to be a lawyer. But I wanted to be a business owner. So after college, I went to work for my mom and dad, who had a manufacturing company. And I shared an office with my dad. And my part of the office consisted of 2 sawhorses and a door. That was my workspace. And within about 6 months of working for them, I had decided that if I'm going to own my own business, I'm not going to go run into a lawyer every time I turn around. If they can do it, I can do it too. So I did. I continued to work for my parents another 1.5 years, got my master's, went to law school, and I had this idea of what a lawyer should be, what they should look like, the hours they should work, the whole 9 yards. And by God, I was going to be an awesome lawyer. So I get out of law school, and I went to work for the firm that my dad used. Because when I started talking about going to law school, my dad, of course, was proud that he would actually have a lawyer in the family, and had to share that with this attorney who said, start right now, your first summer out, you'll work for me. Yeah, okay, thanks for the offer. Not going on your schedule, going on my own. So I went on my own. But he kept his promise that when I was in law school, I clerked for him the 2 summers. And then I went back to work there. And I wore my suits to work every day. I was there at 7 o'clock in the morning, worked until like 5:36, took work home with me, worked on the weekends. And I did such a great job. I was invited to become a partner after 2 years.
Wow.
Now, normally it's 5 to 7. At that point, it was like 7. So I became a partner at 2 years. And about that same time, I met my husband. And 2 years after we met, we got married. The next year we had baby number 1. And I took 2 months off for maternity leave. Now, mind you, those 2 months off, I wasn't in the office. I just relocated to my living room, where I would have baby on one shoulder, phone on the other, file spread out in front of me. And I billed almost as much being at home on maternity leave as I did at the office. So I went back to work 2 months later, fit into my suit, go Sarah. And 18 months later, son number 2 shows up. I'm like, I'm taking my 2 months off. No big deal, right? So son number 2 was born, beautiful, happy, and healthy for the first 4 hours. 4 hours later, he wasn't healthy anymore and his oxygen level was dropping. And he got airlifted. So he got 2 helicopter rides before he was 8 hours old. One was from our hometown of Wausau to a hospital about an hour away, where they were like, yeah, he's got a problem. So we're going to put him on the same chopper with the same crew and send him down to Milwaukee to Children's Hospital, where they diagnosed the problem. And he had what's called transposition of the greater arteries, which means the arteries in his heart were flipped. So he wasn't getting any oxygenated blood throughout his body. And he had to go through open heart surgery at 6 days. Well, that maternity leave was drastically different than the first one. I was at home with my husband and my 2 babies, and I didn't care about my partners. I didn't care about my files, and I knew somebody would take care of my clients. So he was born in September. In November, I go back to the office, go back to work. And my mindset wasn't the same of, this is what a great lawyer looks like. So it's right around Thanksgiving time, the beginning of November. For most lawyers, the beginning November or December is a great time, because when you're a partner, at least in our firm, that was when we had the discussion of how we're going to divvy up the pot of cash that we had accumulated over the year. Usually that was a really fun meeting. Not that year. That year, it started out with the senior partner saying, Sarah, you're not working hard enough. Sarah, you're not billing enough. Sarah, you're not in the community enough, and nobody knows you. So how should we divide up the money? And then they proceeded to change the formula that we had used for the 8 prior years. That night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, my husband woke up to me crying. And he said, what's the matter? I said, I don't want to go to work. Well, to him, it was perfectly easy. He said, then don't. Me, I'm like, I really don't have a choice, because I was the breadwinner and he stayed home with our babies. And it's not like we had a pool of cash saved up for this situation. And that next morning, I got up, got dressed, went to work, and I'd like to say it got better, but it didn't. So finally one day, and I didn't take it out on my partners, I took it out on my husband.
Sure.
One day he goes, you're out of there, or we're divorced, and this is where I'm taking the boys. Well, that was my wake-up call, and that was the day we started to plan my escape from the firm. And 2 months later, we opened the doors to Ruffi Law Offices and have not looked back since. And now we have 4 boys, still married to the same man, and they are all living life and loving it as teenagers, or as much as a teenager can love life. And they got to grow up in the firm because it wasn't business as usual. And they got a happy mom instead of a crazy psychopath and divorced parents. So
Wow. So you open, and I love that they got a happy mom. And that's the title of your book, title of our podcast today, which I love. What, in hindsight, looking back, what was it? Because it takes a tremendous amount of courage to shut off the well, go hang your own shingle with small babies. And what was it for you that made you believe you can be happy in both worlds, that you can have a successful career? Were you running from, or were you running to? If you could, kind of retrack through your journey.
I believe everything happens for a reason. and there is no such thing as a coincidence. I also believe that you can put up with an awful lot, but when the leverage is strong enough, something has to snap. And in my case, the leverage clearly was strong enough, but it wasn't until my husband said, "You're out of there or we're divorced, and I know where I'm taking your children." So I didn't like my partners. I loved my husband. I absolutely loved my children, and I wasn't willing to let them go. So in terms of leverage being enough, that was just like off the charts. Nothing else mattered. And I didn't know how many of my clients were going to follow me because, of course, the senior partner was like, "These are firm clients. They're not your clients."
Sure.
I'm like, well, we'll see how
We'll
good
find out.
and who's going to follow me. And it just so happened, I knew that when my partners found out about my plans to leave, I would be done at the firm that day.
Immediately walk you out.
Immediately.
Yep.
Walk me out. You're done. You're out of here. And so we were doing everything on the down low. Had talked to my banker and swore him to secrecy because that bank was clients of the firm, but he was also our banker for real estate and other things that we were doing. And I'm like, "If I open my own firm, will you loan me the money?" He said, "Whatever you need." I'm like, "Okay, how much do you think I need?" And he goes, "Well, I know another lawyer that just did it, and this is how much they borrowed. So why don't we do a loan and a line of credit?" And I'm like, "Perfect." And then Dwight went out of town to get my furniture. He was looking around during the day while I was at work. He and the boys were looking for an office space. And then the banker goes, "Well, I know this other lawyer who's semi-retired. I think his space is still available." So my husband calls this lawyer who's like, absolutely didn't particularly care for my senior partner, wanted to make sure that I was successful. So he gave us a screaming deal on the rent. And we were in that spot for 6 years before we bought our own building. So
wow.
when my partners found out, I was done. But at least I had the heads up because that morning, it was a Friday morning. It was February 20th of 2004. And I had met with a client before I went to the office, and Dwight called me to say, "They know." I'm like, "Who knows what?" "Your partners know that you're leaving." "Okay." I said, "How'd they find out?" He goes, "I don't know, but I just got a call from the landlord who got a call from my senior partner." I'm like, "Fine." So I walked into the office, got called into the conference room, and we had a little meeting, and I was done. I'm like, "That's fine. So Conrad, what are we doing for the firm clients that I've been taking care of?" I said, "How about if I call them and see if they'd like to stay here, or if they want me to take their files with me?" "That's fine." So I went to my office and I took every open file that I had, called the client, explained the situation, and every one of them walked out with me. Wow. So I walked out with 2 months worth of work and packed up 8 years of my life, because it was 2 years clerking. Well, basically 10 years of my life, but 8 years as a lawyer there over the course of the afternoon, and took it into my new office where the carpet had just gone in with no furniture because that was coming the following week. Phones were coming in 2 weeks. Computers were coming in 2 weeks. And on Monday morning, the day after my oldest turned 2, I opened my office with files on the floor, an old cell phone, an old laptop, and a used laser printer from a friend of ours, and have never looked back. So the time was right. The clients were so supportive. And I even had clients that found out that I had left that firm, were like, "Thank God, because now I can come to you. There was no way I was going to come to you when you were with them."
Oh, wow.
So, and I called one of my old partners who had moved to Florida, and I'm like, hey, Ann, I won't open my own firm. And I told her what happened. And she goes, I knew you weren't going to last long once you started having kids, because they did that same thing to me. And I knew you weren't going to put up with it.
Ah,
So I wanted to spend time with my kids. I wanted to spend time with my husband. And I wasn't really cut out once I got married and had kids to practice the old boys club way of practicing law. That didn't work for me. So it's kind of a long way to answer your question, but I have been practicing law differently for the last 18 years than most lawyers practice, just because I decided I get to set the rules. I don't have to do it the way everybody else does. And that's kind of where the book came in, as my husband saying, Sarah, you really have a lot to share with people based on how you run things. And you really need to write a book. So I did.
oh my goodness. No, I love your story in the journey, because every detail, the timeline is so relevant, even from behind every breakdown. So right around Thanksgiving, when you're in the conference room trying ready to take your bags of cash, and you have that come to Jesus meeting, so to speak, where you have that clarity. And then you have the ultimatum from your husband, which I love, 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 because
I did.
our family are our greatest leaders and coach, right? If we really truly want to get still and present and listen to them, because you and I both know many professionals, especially women, who have a BS story in their head that they can have it all. And I have coached so many law firms, or talked to so many law firms, where the women are, I can tell in 5 minutes of being on a consultation with them that, the problem is not just like your other clients. Thank God now we can finally go to you, because no way were we going to work with you when you were with that firm. And it's a shame that people won't see the common denominator is them. And I meet a lot of female attorneys. And I think I told you this the last time that we talked, that I have a half-written podcast that I'm putting out there, that it's going to be a little controversial about why, especially since the pandemic, that employees are fleeing women-led businesses, women-led law firms, because of the amount of stress that they are under to fit into this old school male dom, and the rule book that they're playing by. And I believe there's in so much internal conflict, because it doesn't resonate with who they are as a human being. It doesn't feel good for them. It doesn't match their personality, their essence, how they want to do law, what they envisioned law being like, what they envisioned being an entrepreneur. And they can't even stuff it or hide it. It's just oozing out all of their internal pain, because they're running this business that they're not very proud of. They're doing it based on, like your old senior partner, rule book.
The American Bar Association has actually been trying to figure out why female attorneys are not only leaving the firms, but they're leaving the practice of law altogether in that 5, 6, 7 year time frame. And I'm like, all you really have to do is ask a female attorney who doesn't leave why they think these people are leaving. And I can tell you from my standpoint, they are leaving for that very reason, that I don't want to have to pick between having a family and having a career. And I am going to give up my career practicing law so that I can have a family and a life. And we don't have to make that choice. I refuse to make that choice. I just chose to do it someplace else and to do it on my terms. And truly, anybody who wants to do it can find a way. If you don't, you can find an excuse.
Yes. And I talked to this is that's perfect. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing in regards to really support women in particular. I love your Facebook page, Woman Warrior Lawyer, what you're doing on Instagram, what you're doing on Facebook in regards to really helping to empower professionals to be successful in their personal life as well as their professional life and kind of managing their head trash, their mindset.
Head trash is the exact correct word to use. And it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. One of my, I'm a big fan of quotes.
Me too.
And that's what I do on social media. I've put together quotes that I've found, but I design them with pictures that we've taken. And it's always something that resonates with me. And it has a message that's forward moving. Because as long as we're moving forward, even if it's a step or two, you look back and you realize how far you've come. But my favorite quote is, where focus goes, energy flows. And if
Mm,
we're focusing on the garbage up there, we are going to get more garbage up there. But if we focus on, this is what I want for my life, this is what my ideal life will look like, then you get that vision, you think about what are my goals then? What are my personal goals? What are my professional goals? What are my relationship goals, my financial goals, whatever. And you write them down, and things are going to come into your life. That opportunity, take the opportunity when it knocks, and you push that door open and you go. So that's where my quotes and the stuff that I do online is to help people realize that I truly am in control of my life, because we all are. We all make choices. We all get to decide what we want to do. Nobody has to stay at a job. I didn't have to stay at that miserable firm. I chose to do that until I was so miserable that the only possible choice, after my husband gave me the ultimatum that I didn't want to hear, was, I choose you, which means I have to leave there. I didn't have to stay. I chose to leave there, knowing that if I stayed there because it was a safe place to practice law, I would have been divorced in probably 2 months.
yeah. And I love where focus goes, energy flows. And I also am always saying that money is energy. And that's a perfect example,
It
right?
is.
It was a
It is.
miserable place. You were not treated well. Especially once you had children, right? And then you're almost crucified for that. And had you even felt like you had to stay, you never would have made the money that you needed, that you wanted, that you deserved, and what have you, because of such the toxic energy around your situation. Not saying the firm was toxic, probably was, but just you feeling like a victim and you feeling completely locked in no choice. When you have no choice, no possibility, it cuts off everything,
Well, it
right?
does. It does. And I was absolutely miserable. And it really came down to, I loved my clients. I loved what I did. I hated where I did it. So it's really looking at, what do you want? What do you like in life? Where do you want to go? And my husband talks about, I am truly living my purpose as a practicing attorney, helping my clients solve their problems. I represent businesses and business owners, and I've gotten into more estate planning because it gives me more flexibility with my calendar. Whereas
Yes.
litigation work gives you like no flexibility when you
Yes.
have a full litigation calendar. And it allows me to get into all these different businesses and be creative and think outside the box and help them solve their issues. So that energizes me. But where I was, it sucked my energy. And being able to open up my own firm gave me the freedom to design my space, to design my energy, to design my training for my support staff, design how I'm going to handle and treat my clients and process their stuff. It is just 100 times better when I get to design it to work for me and to work for my life. But I can't just say, well, this is going to be working for me. And now you staff, you are going to do things like the old school way.
Yeah.
It's not do as I say, not as I do. It's you lead by example, and the firm is designed not only to work for me, but my beliefs and my principles are what I instill in my office, and that's how I treat my staff as well. So if you have kids at home and you got a sick kid, that's where you belong. You don't belong at work. Me, if I had a sick kid, I might be at home or they might be sleeping on my couch.
Right.
But
Right.
I have that flexibility. You know, I had a pack and play in the corner of my office for, I think, 4 or 5 years, and there was usually a kid sleeping in it. But that's how we chose to design our firm, is that the kids are free to come and hang out, come after school, whatever. In fact, one of my favorite pictures that I've used in a quote not too long ago was my baby snuggled up on my lap with his blankie, with my one hand kind of holding him and cradling him there, and the other hand on the keyboard because I was working while he was napping.
Oh,
That he could
beautiful.
be here while I was still getting work done, and I could still have that bonding time. That's what life is about.
A practice by, and you keep using these terms like design and choice. And even with, I love that when you added estate planning to your practice, because you are in full control of your calendar. I'd say 90% of my clients I work with are estate planning, elder law attorneys, and I love it. Business attorneys, asset protection, because you're in full control. You get to decide. You're not dealing with courts and opposing counsel and all these other things that are pressed against you. You choose the people around you. And I love what you say in your book too, about how you can have it all and the courage to seek your freedom. And that's a term I hear from humans all the time: mental freedom, emotional freedom, freedom of, that's what wakes us up in the middle of the night, that you owe the file, that what have you, you don't feel free even when you own your own business, your own practice, and design your firm to fit your life and be happy in both worlds. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about some tips and tricks you picked up along the way to, constantly remind yourself your name's on the door? You get to decide how this looks like, what you do, maybe some tips, tricks, techniques that you do to really root yourself and anchor yourself into that. I don't know. I hear this from attorneys so often. Even though I own the practice, I don't feel free, number one. Or number two, there's always this fear that I'm still going to get fired, not by the big fat boss in the corner, but by a client.
That's a very interesting question, because the way I look at it, it's kind of a multiple
Yeah.
question. Let me take the last part first, in terms of fear of being fired by the client.
Yeah.
And I look at that relationship. How is it starting? I don't take everybody that walks through the door. I don't schedule appointments with everybody that calls. And I kind of I read Jack Welch's first book that he put out. He was the CEO of General
Is it Good to Great? Is that the first one?
No, Good to Great was somebody else. That's a red cover book, and I can't remember the guy's name. I don't know if
I'll Google search it and put in the show notes, folks.
I got it downstairs, so I can send it to you. I know one's the GE Way, and another one I think was Jack. Anyway, in there, he talks about every year they basically fire the bottom 10% of employees and of customers. And I look at it, I grade my clients A, B, C, D, F. Love my A's, B's are good, C's are very few, D's and F's are gone. And the idea is, can I pick out those C's, D's, and F's before they even come in the door? So that they don't come in the door and that I just have the A's and B's. And then the A's and B's at some point is this client dropping down from an A or a B to a C, D, or an F. If the answer is yes, they need to go away, because I know that those C's, D's, and F clients are the ones that they're going to be sitting in the back corner of my desk, giving me heartburn, waking me up at night, and I'm going to keep pushing them off because I don't want to deal with them. And then they just grow like the monster in the closet or under your kid's bed, right? They're also the ones that you're going to lose money on, run the risk of getting an ethics grievance or a malpractice case. So I don't worry about getting fired by those people. I fire them instead. And that gives me more freedom. And it allows me to be more selective and to remind myself, I've been practicing long enough. I'm established well enough. I don't have to take every file. While I may want to help them, are they truly a good fit for me in my practice? Or are they going to be a headache? If they're going to be a headache, thank you very much. I'm glad you considered us. Perhaps this attorney would be a better fit for you, but I'm not going to take your file. So that's how I prevent myself from the fear of being fired by a client.
Love it. And setting up that conversation and the expectations first and foremost of, we're a family first firm. I have a estate planning attorney that I remember her client service coordinator is a single mom, and she brought the baby in the pack and play, and they brought their dogs to work, what have you. Their conversion rates went through the roof when they started bringing family and dogs and things of that nature, because they practiced what they preach. First of all, and they modeled it, and they're very clear with clients up front. At any given time, there's going to be a puppy or there's going to be a baby in this office, just so you know.
Exactly. And it's amazing because that allows people to realize that you are a real person. You're not just this uptight, snooty-faluty lawyer that they got to worry about how they look or how they act. And when I have new clients that say, I have 1 or 2 kids at home and I don't know who's going to watch them, I'm like, bring them along. I have a tote of toys that my kids would play with that your child can play with while you're here. There is nothing in my office that they can destroy, because if there was, my children would have destroyed it by now. And they're just so like, really? Or when they come in and they have their child is an infant or a toddler or 3 or 4 years old, and they're all like, don't do that. And I'm like, it's all good. I got 4 of those. Let's just have our conversation. They are fine. And the amount of assuring that you give to the client to put them at ease that their kid's not going to do something wrong while we're talking about business, the first time around, when they see that I'm not getting upset because their kid is simply being a kid, then they're like, oh, you're all right.
Yeah.
So and the other thing is, you design your office. I had a client that came into my office once, brand new client. I never talked to him before they walked through the door. And this is one of the examples in my book. They walked in. Our office is an old 2-story house that was converted into an office building. Walk in the front door, greeted by my receptionist, and they're like, I feel like I'm walking into a friend's living room. I'm like, that's pretty much by design. And then they see pictures of my kids and everything. You get to design your space when you own it. And as long as you spend as much time as you do at the office, design it to be comfortable, but you design it with your clientele in mind as well. So my clients, I'd say probably 80% of them are men, and they're in, within, I don't know, 5 to 10 years on either side of me, age-wise. And that's how it's been since I opened my doors. So I designed my layout to be comfortable for a man walking in, but not to put off a woman walking in, because I represent plenty of female business owners as well. But I have a husband and 4 boys. So my boys feel comfortable coming in. And it's not like all fine china and frilly this and pink, blah, blah, blah. No, it's more outdoor stuff because that's what we like to do as well.
Yes.
And it's comfortable. So
So a practice by design, a practice that fits your personality, shows the vulnerability, shows the human side of it. What last tip would you give to our listeners in regards to what you have learned about really truly having it all? And once you have that courage, one of my favorite sayings is from the movie We Bought a Zoo, where Matthew Damon says, all it takes is 20 seconds of insane courage. And I just love that statement. And you model that. You've written a book about it. What would you leave as a tip in regards to really, truly what you've learned along the way of having it all?
Figure out how you can make your family and your practice live in harmony. Think about them as 2 partners in a dance. Sometimes one takes the lead and other times the other one does. Sometimes it's a slow dance, sometimes it's a fast dance, but make them dance together, not competing against each other. And you really make the practice of law a lifestyle, not just, I gotta go to work. Design it so it works for you. And as my kids have grown, what that looks like has been able to change. When they were little, I wasn't coming to work early because morning, the get up routine, getting them dressed, getting them ready for the day, that was my special time. My husband had them all day. Bedtime routine was mom's time. Baths, my husband did the baths sometimes, but baths, jammies, reading a book, snuggling them, and getting them into bed, those were sacred times. And if I had a brief or something that I had to do, it was going to have to be done outside of those times. And my husband, first day of spring, he would come, and one day he had taken a convertible for a test drive because he decided that the firm needed a convertible. So he came and picked me up at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the ice cream store had just opened up for the season. So we went and got an ice cream cone, and then I came back to work. Don't feel guilty about doing those things. And, the old expression, happy wife, happy life, really works.
Yes.
And that's one in our house. And the other one is, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody gonna be happy. So what makes you happy? How can you design your office, make your schedule work for you so you can be happy? When do you go work out? When do the kids come in after school? Ours, it's like the zoo comes in and the zoo goes out. And so you'd have this uproar in the middle of the afternoon, but it was nice that they'd come and give me a hug, tell me about their day, and then they would leave. And I didn't have anybody looking down their nose at me.
Yes.
That my kids could do that and my husband could.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. What works for you?
And communicating it with those that what I love about sometimes fast dance, sometimes slow dance, sometimes it's mom's working late tonight, sometimes, okay, I'm going to take a break for this 2-3 hours, but then it's the work life integration, when you versus trying to balance it, because that doesn't happen. And when you communicate with the people in your life, but I'm just visualizing you with your kids and your husband, and I know they're older now, but when you over communicate with people with what's going on, what your week's going to look like, when we're dancing fast, when we're slow dancing, when we're not dancing, what it's going to look like, just like with your clients, of setting up that expectation first and foremost. As you're speaking, I'm like, is it really that simple?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
it's that 20 seconds of insanity, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to, one of the expressions that I think I have it on the back of some of my jackets, and it's kind of at the bottom of a lot of my quotes that I do, is decide, commit, succeed. You make your decision of, this is what I want to do. This is what I want it to look like. You commit to making that happen. And once you commit to that, you take action and you will succeed.
Beautiful.
So like when my kids were little, for example, and in preschool, I like doing the crafty thing. And I had the ability and the freedom based on how I designed my practice, that I would go to the preschool, whether it was Joey's class. Actually, I did it for all 4 of them. I would go to their preschool class 1 day a month and take a craft to do with the kids. And my kids just thought, well, that's the way it is. And they didn't think twice about it. Or mom would skip out in the afternoon when they were doing a play in their classroom. They just took it for granted. And I realized how fortunate I am when our oldest, who has his first real job, and was surprised that he had to work the day after Thanksgiving, because he didn't realize that places other than perhaps stores where you go buy, do the Black Friday sales, actually have to work.
Yeah.
Because they have never seen mom's office open the day after Thanksgiving, because it's not. I've 25 years, I've never worked the day after Thanksgiving. I took it off at my old firm and I closed the office at my current firm.
That's great.
Because that's important to me.
Yeah. All right, Sarah, thank you. Boy, we could talk all day. I thank you for writing this beautiful piece of work. So folks, that's going to be in the show notes. Be happy in both worlds, and how you can have a successful career and a happy family. I'm going to put it on Amazon with Sarah's links in regards to how you can connect with her on Facebook for our women attorneys, Women Warrior Lawyer. Put all your Instagram, and then again, your LinkedIn post here. Thank you for being our guest today, Sarah. I really, really appreciate your time, your wisdom, and for putting this. I love that. Decide, commit, succeed, and putting this in there, because I think it is that simple, and you've taught us how it is.
Thank you so much, Molly. I'm always happy to share, and I'd love to connect with your listeners in any way I can help them, because truly, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And growth lies on the other side of fear, right? Think about the fishbowl with the fish trying to hop into a different bowl.
Yes.
Happiness truly lies on the other side of fear.
Oh, beautiful. Well said. All right, listeners, that's a wrap. Thank you. And Sarah, thank you so much for your work you're doing and being a leader that is leading leaders out there in the legal space.
You're welcome. Thanks.
We've reached the end of another impactful conversation on the Hire and Empower podcast. Whether this was your first episode or you're a longtime listener, I know you can tell I have passion for people. Whether you're a business owner, employee, executive, or hiring manager, I understand the situation you're in. Hiring, onboarding, and leadership is expensive, exhausting, overwhelming, and if that's not enough, it's also time-consuming. My friends, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a team at H&E that has your back. For over 25 years, they've transformed over 4,000 law firms into efficient, effective, profitable assets for their business and made it fun to come to work again. Check out our Smart Hire solution, our employee leadership program, and the 66-day law firm turnaround at hiringandempowering.com.